So I'd like to kind of go back to something that we were talking about earlier when we talked about sort of the chicken or the egg, and you said like those two things really ideally need to happen in tandem because there's so many implications of how they rely on each other, the e-commerce engine, platform, whatever we want to call it, the e-commerce solution that's powering the functional pieces of the commerce business with the content pieces. And so from a CMS perspective, what would be your recommendation to organizations that are looking to buy an e-commerce solution of some type? What should they look for?
I think there are a lot of parallels actually between what to look for in a good content system or platform and what to look for in an e-commerce platform as well. I mean, one is, what's the underlying architecture? Are you actually buying into this new architectural approach that ultimately is about changing the way that we think of business applications? Because that's what they are. These are business applications. It's just that in this kind of composable approach, we talk about headless as a key enabler of composability. In this approach, what you're really doing is fundamentally different to what we've classically done with any kind of enterprise business suite, whether it was commerce oriented or digital experience oriented or content management, whatever it might be. The classical approach is to say, the way that you do the work is baked into the application. What we're saying with this composable approach is actually we're turning that on its head and we're designing the systems for what we're trying to accomplish and the way we want to work in order to accomplish those goals. And guess what? As our goals are changing, as the targets move, as customer expectations change, we need to change the way that we work in order to meet our business objectives effectively. So the key issue here, whether you're talking about a commerce platform or a content platform, is you want that inherent architectural flexibility to adapt and change over time. So consistent but flexible is kind of the key thing. You really want something that is designed to be integrated with other systems, that really supports this kind of collaboration and collaborative workflows across systems and across teams, because that's the reality of how highly effective teams work, especially given the demands and pressures to operate at speed today. So again, another parallel here. The other big thing is really about scalability, because if you aren't designing for and planning for scale initially, you are just buying yourself problems further down the line. And again, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about content or commerce, these things are inevitably going to grow over time. So scale and reusability, there's an element here of performance that's actually pretty crucial as well. These are all foundational principles of choosing the right systems. The other element of this, we've talked a little bit about collaborative workflows, which is really the piece that I think marketing and merchandising and other sort of editorial teams, if you will, are really focused on. We also need easier administrative views as well. So again, systems that allow you to put administration in one place or to consolidate that view. These are the things that make life a lot easier for our technical and development teams as well.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point and a strong point. Something that we've seen in a lot of the analyst reports, especially from the e-commerce side recently, is this idea of, hey, now that I kind of feel like this is what's happened in the market. Tell me if you think so too. I feel like we've gone from, and I'm coming from an e-commerce point of view, obviously, but I'm sure you're seeing it in the CMS world too. Like we've gone from these like big, massive, like kind of suites that are all encompassing, buy one thing, get everything with it, to now this pendulum swing over to pieces and components and catering to the marketers over here, these nice big suites, to more catering to the technology people. We kind of need to move a little bit back more in the middle, because we've forgotten about the people that are working on the platforms all day long. Like the technology people are super important. Like we love our developers, right? But there's also these marketers and merchandisers that have to work in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 systems. And depending upon the team size, that can completely eradicate some of the benefits of going composable in the first place, right? Like the efficiency and stuff. Would you say that that's something that you guys have also seen in the CMS world? I actually am not super well versed in like the long history of CMS world.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And I'm smiling a little bit because this is something that I get very adamant and exercised about along with one of my close colleagues. who runs our demo team. We've talked a lot about this because we've gone through this ourselves, and my colleague Artis, who leads our demo team in particular, the whole challenge of composability is to recognize that we aren't just trying to make it easy to present stuff to our customers. That is a key part of what we're doing. We're trying to meet customer expectations. We're trying to shape great customer experiences and ensure that the probability is that that's what our customers actually get, right? And on their receiving end, that's what it feels like. But in order to do that, we're not just creating and staging experiences for customers. We're actually shaping the entire digital workspace that our internal staff uses to do the work of shaping and staging those things. And they're flip sides of the same coin. So you don't just have one project to implement a bunch of new, composable headless tools. You have two projects, because the second half of that is how you put all of those pieces together to create the great interface, create the dashboard, the workspace, the digital environment in which everybody, not just the development teams, but all of the content and editorial and merchandising teams, actually do their day-to-day jobs as well. And it's critical to recognize that what we're doing is trying to shape that in a way that is both designed to suit the work that they do and the way they want to do that work. And by the way, not every team has the same view of that, which is an important distinction, but also how we're designing the interface to reflect that. And the flexibility and this is again the blessing of composability, is that we can make that happen relatively easily. It just means we have to be really good at working collaboratively across the development teams and the editorial teams to create a clear and consistent understanding of what that environment needs to be, so that we can each work independently with a high degree of autonomy, but we're actually working in close collaboration because we designed that into the systems that we use.
You mentioned kind of two projects. I would advocate that there's a third project that they need to be super aware of too when it comes to the strategy of going composable, I guess we could say. Are people saying going composable now, like they're saying going headless? I don't know, but being composable. I think they are saying being, because they're like really adopting it as their mantra. But
it is a mindset. It is a mindset as well as an architecture, for sure.
But yeah, so I think that the third project, and one that is often overlooked, is maintenance. Like, let's be real. We are solving some real issues right now, and this sounds like a really good thing, but let's not forget about the long term, because one of the main reasons that we see people wanting to go composable, especially when they're newer or they're slower to adopt sort of technologies in the market, like we see this a lot in B2B. When they're advocating for going composable, a lot of that is around reducing technical debt. And there's a lot of things that go into reducing technical debt, but you have to be very smart and intentional about how you put these pieces together, for not just right now, but also for the long term, because you're going to end up right back in that same technical debt situation that you were in at the very beginning. I would imagine that you could take that exact same sentence I just said and replace technical debt with content issues, and it would be very true.
Yeah. It's exactly the same, and we speak in exactly the same language and say something very similar. One of the interesting things about headless is that we tend to draw a contrast between monoliths and headless options, and I think that's as true in commerce as it is in content. The reality is you can totally build a monolithic system with headless technologies.
Oh yeah,
it's not that hard to do.
They're out
exactly.
There. We compete with them.
So headless alone is not enough. It is a label that applies to this idea of being API first and API centric, and using APIs as the way of accessing and integrating across these systems. But what you need is the frameworks, you need the platforms, you need the environments, and you need the capabilities to use these tools in the most effective way to build flexible and adaptable environments. And that is as much about how you do things like content structuring and content modeling in the content world, As it is the way you design the interfaces, the way you design the workflows, the way you're integrating the different pieces of your tech stack in order to reflect a workflow, a process flow, the requirements that you're trying to design and build for in terms of meeting those customer expectations. If those aren't flexible, then you've basically used a new technology to paint yourself back into the same corner. So this is very much a scenario of recognizing the inherent need for flexibility. And that's really what we're extremely passionate about building and designing for.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Paint yourself back in the corner. And in fact, we have actually seen, and this is, I don't know if this is going to be a trend or it's just where we're at right now, but we have seen some organizations that were kind of quick to jump on the composable train, if you will, and made a choice in a vendor that on the surface looked great, but when they finally got into it, they sort of realized like, whoa, this is way more work than we thought. You know, they went from a legacy, what we would consider sort of a legacy, call it a monolith, I guess, system if you'd like, to this highly like componentized system and did not realize what they were stepping into. And now they're kind of trying to figure out, okay, this is not going to work for us, but we're trying to escape all these issues that we had at the very beginning. And so they've just painted themselves back in that corner again. And it happened much quicker than you would think. You know, we just talked about long-term maintenance and thinking about the long-term maintenance of the system. But these guys, there's one that I have in the back of my head in particular. I mean, it was not even a year, and they just kind of scrapped the whole project.